Welcome back to another episode of The Lawyer You Know, and today we're giving a Housewife and the Hustler update on Erika Jayne and Tom Girardi and what's going on in their case, and we're focusing in on whether or not we believe their divorce is a sham and why that would be the case. So before we break down whether this divorce is a sham and a delay tactic, make sure you hit that subscribe button, join our community, talk about these legal cases, talk about your opinions, what you think the legal world should look like in our country. That's what we love to talk about when we unpack the facts of these cases. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, like this video if you like this content, and let's jump into it. So many times when there are lawsuits pending against you and you're getting sued, one of the tactics of the defendants is to do everything they can to delay that process, shield their assets, divert their assets, hide their assets, so that we as the plaintiffs and the victims in the case cannot come after it and cannot collect it. There are a lot of ways to do this, and defendants try many different ways. And in this case, Tom Girardi and Erika Jayne are trying a multitude of ways to hide, divert, and delay their assets from being collected from these defendants. We've already talked about Erika Jayne refusing to cooperate, being held in contempt. Tom Girardi and his law firm also held in contempt. Their assets were frozen. There are all sorts of lawsuits going on around this case that we haven't talked about, that I didn't even know about, like Girardi Keese. That was the name of the law firm. Well, Keese, Tom Girardi's partner, is also suing him in another business venture where they had some property and there was $300,000+ in profits that Tom Girardi kept and did not split with the partners. He took out loans against that building, so they're suing him. The victims are suing him. All sorts of people are suing Tom Girardi and now trying to wrap in Erika Jayne because she has some money and they think she may be involved, may have known, or may have profited off of his fraudulent embezzlement. So, what are they doing to hide these assets or delay this process? The first is their divorce, okay? It's being called a sham, not just in the news, but also in the actual lawsuits and pleadings from the lawyer that represents the victims in the plane crash that Tom Girardi kept their money. So it's actually being called out in these pleadings that this divorce is a sham proceeding, because once you file for divorce and you talk about splitting assets, you have to talk about what the marital assets are. You have to talk about who gets what, who has to pay what for spousal support. That becomes a debt for one of these spouses. So if Tom Girardi has to pay Erika Jayne $1 million a year for the rest of his life, that is going to be another debt he has in this entire process that these victims may not be able to collect. That's just an example. But when you tie up and put encumbrances on these assets, it makes it even more difficult for the plaintiffs and the victims to collect. And these lawyers that represent the plaintiffs are saying they're doing this as a sham. Tom Girardi's in on this because he just wants to give the money to Erika. He doesn't want to give it to the victims. He wants to shield Erika. He wants to say, okay, I've got no money, but I still owe Erika all this money in the divorce. I owe my partner's money. I owe everybody money. So I'm also going to take another major delay tactic, which is bankruptcy. When a defendant files bankruptcy in a civil case, most of the time, all proceedings are stayed, which means paused. Stop everything. This person has no money. We don't need to waste the court's time, energy, efforts, and resources on litigating a case where we know at the end nobody's going to be able to collect anything. So that's what's happening in this case. And Tom Girardi has all of his assets now in the bankruptcy court, and they're going to figure out how to split them up. But what does that do? What bankruptcy does is freezes the assets, basically. So when all the proceedings are stopped, now that causes a huge delay because it goes into the bankruptcy court, and these victims can now come and present to the bankruptcy trustee why they deserve this money out of Tom Girardi's pot, right? And that's fine. And they can present how much money they need. But usually when someone goes into bankruptcy and they're splitting up the money, nobody is getting full value for their case. So if you're owed $11 million and Tom Girardi only has 5% of the assets to what he owes, you're going to get 5% of that $11 million. So that delays the process and limits how much Tom Girardi can pay. And the divorce proceeding comes into that because now he has another creditor. And one of the big things with this divorce is they're trying to figure out who owes who. Because you would think Tom Girardi, worth multi-million dollars, big shot lawyer, would pay Erika Jayne spousal support. But he's filed documents saying the judge should terminate his need to pay Erika Jayne any spousal support. She has also filed documents asking for that spousal support and saying that the judge should terminate his ability, Tom Girardi, to collect spousal support from Erika Jayne. So we'll keep an eye on that, on who's going to pay who. But all of this could be an effort to just slow down payment to anybody else, slow down the opportunity for anybody else to touch their money, and this money could stay in the hands of Erika Jayne and Tom Girardi, because even though they're in bankruptcy, even though they're in a divorce, they still have access to some of this money. It's still paying for their lifestyle, paying for their house. They have to have a place to live. They have to keep up what's a normal life for them, and usually, I believe the language in family law cases is the life that the other spouse is accustomed to. So if Tom Girardi is paying for spousal support right now, he has to pay for the life Erika Jayne is accustomed to. They're also battling out who's going to pay the attorney's fees. Lawyers are making money left and right out of all these pockets because there's a bankruptcy lawyer, there's a family law lawyer for each side, there's the plaintiff's lawyer, there's the defense lawyer defending him for the civil case, and there's also now a permanent conservatorship for Tom Girardi because of his Alzheimer's, because of his dementia, okay? That's another delay in this case. And I think we've determined at this point that Tom Girardi has a lot of friends in high places. We've talked about the California State Bar. We've talked about some of the big shot lawyers that were scared of him and scared to step to him. So, who's to say that whoever his conservator is and whoever's in charge of his conservatorship is not in on this as well? He's getting paid, Tom's getting paid. They're also protecting his assets and delaying the process even more, because think about it. Nothing moves quickly in the court system. So we have these civil lawsuits. We have the divorce proceedings. We have the bankruptcy proceedings. We have the conservatorship proceedings. All these proceedings on proceedings on proceedings on proceedings just delay the opportunity for any of these plaintiffs and any of these victims to collect on what's rightfully theirs and what Tom Girardi embezzled and stole from them. So do you believe, let me know in the comments, do you believe this divorce is a sham? Do you believe that Tom Girardi is using his legal prowess to set up all these delays and set up all these impediments to collection from the victims that he rightfully owes this money to, allegedly? What do you think? Do you think this is legit, or do you think this is all a sham? There's also going to be another major piece of evidence in this case that's going to be in front of us for the days, weeks, and months ahead, and that is the show, the Real Housewives show that Erika Jayne is on. She is using that as a vehicle and as a medium to tell her part of the story and distance herself from Tom Girardi and these potential civil lawsuits that the victims are trying to bring her into and make her a part of. She has had quotes like, "I left because he pushed me further and further out. The conversations that I used to have were now reduced down to a sentence or two. I just kept walking around that house and knowing that this marriage was headed down a really bleak path. I had to make a choice to do what was right for me. I couldn't live that way anymore." Another quote, "I didn't want to do that. And that's the truth. It also doesn't serve me to talk a lot about what is happening legally or will happen legally because I'm married to someone who's very good in that area." So once again, she's trying to distance herself, saying, he didn't talk to me anymore. I didn't know what was going on with him. He distanced himself. And then she says, I don't want to talk about it anymore because he is so skilled legally. It doesn't help me to talk about it, yet she continues to talk about it. So do you think we're going to hear more on this Real Housewives show? If you have heard her say things that I don't have clips of or I don't have quotes of, post them in the comments and I will break them down in the future. This is so interesting because you're seeing in front of your eyes what we deal with as plaintiffs' lawyers all the time from defendants who do everything they can to delay the process and hide or protect assets that should be going to the people that they have wronged and the people that they owe money to. So I'm interested to hear your perspective. Do you think it's fair that they get to delay with all of these legal challenges? Do you think these types of delays are fair in the court system? Because we have some judges now that are saying the case has to be done in 2 years. Here's a case management order from the very beginning. You have to be done in 2 years. You have to go to trial in 2 years, which some of you may think is way too long in itself. We have some cases that are around 3, 4, 5, 6 years that can take forever. So if every case had to be done in 2 years, it would push the process much quicker. So let me know what you think about that, what you think about the life of a case and how long it should be from your perspective, people that aren't lawyers, that aren't judges, because the court system is so packed and so delayed, and defendants use every tactic they can to continue delaying that process. So that's our update from the Housewife and the Hustler. Is this divorce a sham? You tell me. Until next time. Thanks for watching this episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you like this content, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to our page and like our videos. If you want some interaction, get in the comments and we'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to know any more information about our firm or this page, you can find out in the description or visit tragoslaw.com. We post multiple times throughout the week, so make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notification and not miss out on the next episode.